Okay, we're going to look at how to prepare your car for export to STL file format in order to take it into QuickCam Pro, which will position it into a format that can be used and accepted by the Denford milling machine. A few things to check first. The first one is the overall length of your block is correct. It should be 223 millimeters. Go to Inspect tab, Distance, and then select the right at the rear of your car, which should be the open edge of the gas canister. I've used a plane there, and then the front edge hasn't quite worked exactly as I'd wanted it. That's okay. It'll help me to illustrate to you. So select the plane. It's easy to kind of select the wrong edges here and get yourself a weird measurement. It's 223 millimeters. See that long blue line? That indicates the length that you're measuring. It's a good idea to flip the car around a bit and make sure you've got the correct distance. Sometimes you can choose the wrong length or get diagonals. That's the length of the car. Now the width of the car, the length of the block and the car, 223 millimeters. The actual car itself, let's measure its length. It's going to go from that surface to here, and the blue line now extends from that surface on the end of the block to the end plane of the car. It's 175.4, which is good because the car can be a maximum of 210 millimeters long without the block and a minimum of 170 millimeters without the block. So the car's within spec. Now the milling machine will not produce the axle hole locations for you to drill. You need to set them up with a bit of code yourself when we come to that part of the program, and I'll show you how to do that. But we need some references, some dimensions that relate the axles holes, which are 6mm diameters. They have to be because the milling tool is a 6mm bull-nosed cutter, which means it has a radius of 3mm and a diameter at the end, at the tip, and a diameter on the shaft of the drill of 6mm. So these axle holes have to be 6mm, so make sure that they are. And the milling machine will reference everything from this point here, the center of the rear of the gas canister hole. Now it'll locate where your axles are, where everything else is on the basis of that point. So we need to find out the relative position of our front and rear axle holes compared to that reference point I showed you in the gas canister, pardon me. Right, now to do this, good idea if you can set up your, go to 3D Model tab, go to Axis over here, and then select Axis through Revolve Face or Feature. Highlight the circle that you want to, or the cylinder, which in this case is a gas canister. Do the same thing here. You'll have to go back and select Axis, go back down there, and then select each of these two holes to produce those little thin axes that you can see. See them? And that makes it really easy for us to get the distance from the middle of the cylinder, each of these different locations. So once you set up those axes in each of the three holes, now it's time to get your pen and paper out and write these three dimensions down. So once again, go back to Inspect, click on Distance, and then select one axis, which is the gas canister axis. Select the next axis, which will be the rear axis of your car, axle. And you'll get a perpendicular distance, and that perpendicular distance is important. We need to write it down. That is the distance down from the central axis of the gas canister to your rear axle hole. And that is 19.5, it says in the dialog box. So write that down, 19.5, or write your distance down. Pardon me, a little bit of a cough. And now we're going to do the same thing. This time we're going to measure the distance from the rear axle to the very rear part of the car, and I'm using my plane to do that. And that distance is 45 millimeters. The blue line indicates it. There it is. That distance there. And I'm going to do the same thing from the front of the car. So again, distance, I want to go from the front axle to the rear plane. Again, you've got to take a little bit of patience to select the right plane. There it is. And the distance there is 130 millimeters. So write those down. There's three dimensions of those distances. Now, before we move on, have a look across on the left-hand side of your screen. Here is, I'll get out a distance here. Here is your browser. When you export your file as an STL file, you won't see it straight away. But when when you come to importing it into QuickCam Pro, you may find that you're left with nothing but one or two parts. A whole lot of stuff went missing along the way. If that happens to you, then this is the reason why. Over here, see the eyes in the center of these little areas? The eye stands for information. There's something about these particular features, geometric features, that Autodesk isn't happy with. Most commonly the problem is that you've started to do a sketch and you thought, I don't like that. You've done another sketch on top of the first one and you thought that's good, and you've extruded or you've created a fillet or something like that, and you've left the first sketch there, and that sketch sits there and Inventor doesn't know what to do with it, and it gets confused, and as a result you can run into problems. So delete those old sketches. That'll often be the problem, and or you'll have something like an impossible bit of geometry, like you'll have a fillet that just simply can't go around where you want it to go. Get rid of those, fix them up, and then you'll have no problems. Okay, we've discussed most of the things we need to. Let's go to exporting. Click on the top left Inventor button, go to export, export CAD format, and give your car a name. Now, I've got a few different versions of this car. I'm going to call it Affilian 7. Make sure you have a name which has some kind of representation or a suffix with iteration. Shows you which design is this. Is it the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth? Because they get confusing after a while. So make sure your names have that. Choose STL format. So out of the drop down list, STL stands for stereolithographic. It tessellates your geometry into triangles, two-dimensional triangles, which can be used by the milling program. Now go to options, make sure that on the dialog box that you select millimeters over here, not inches. Click OK, click save, and your project has been saved, ready to be imported into QuickCam Pro, the software, and I'll show you how to do that in the next tutorial. Thanks very much. Bye bye for now.